Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, lead editor and writer on Maul Shadowlord, and you're listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Welcome back to your favorite Star Wars podcast on the Nerd Party Network that you just can't get enough of, Aggressive Negotiations. I am Jedi Master John Mills, and I'm joined by my esteemed friend and venerable co-host, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing, as we get ready to go into Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian, The Spies. And this is going to be, I think, a very interesting discussion. But before we get to that discussion, of course, go over to thenerdparty.com/contact, reach out to the show there. Find us on X Twitter at The Jedi Masters. Find the network at Join Nerd Party on X. And you can also find the network as The Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. So, Matt, here we are, penultimate episode of the third season. You're getting ready to go into it. We've made it through the Lizzo episode, Guns for Hire.
Yeah.
Where were your expectations for this one?
I think coming into this one, I didn't really know what to expect. The season had been incredibly unexpected, sometimes in good ways and sometimes in ways that left, me shaking my head or scratching my head, just kind of wondering what is going on. And I'd say coming into this episode, I was hoping that the last two episodes would really bring us home. And with the way that this episode starts, the way that it brings you in and it utilizes those things that were a frustration previously to then build an entire episode here and then into the next one.
Okay, I'm recording again.
The end that you would have hoped for. Okay. No, you're totally fine. No, John is recording again. So it took all of those things, right, that frustrated us at the beginning of the season, kind of drove us a little bit crazy, and yet,
yeah,
what it does with them here, and the way that it weaves the story together, interworking, all of these plot lines in a way that feels so organic. I think, one, I remember coming out of this episode thinking, why weren't they doing this the whole season? And then two, just being like, oh my goodness, what a fantastic episode, bringing all this lore that they've been working on for, basically 3 seasons now at this point, and just bringing it all together. I mean, that's where I remember being, after I watched this episode for the first time, just kind of flabbergasted at what they had been able to do after the frustrations that we had. It felt like the stops and starts almost of this season. It's like it would feel like it was going, and then it almost would like grind to a halt, and then it would get going again, and then it's like, oh, we're back, with the Lizzo episode. And so this was just like,
if anything, it's very frustrating. This was like even on the rewatch.
To a Star Wars fan's soul in the way that it was constructed, the way that it used the lore, and even just some of the ways in which it even expanded the things that we hope to have expansion on.
Literally coming straight out of, the whole Lizzo thing is like, what? What is going on? What is happening here? Because like you're saying, stops and starts, it's almost like this has been a manic season where it's like, I don't know what I'm about to go into.
Exactly.
And when I encounter this, I love this episode. I can't tell you how much I love IG-12. And I still laugh every time I see it, of Grogu getting in there. No, yes. Like, and just going along, it's like,
yeah.
Yes. This is what I'm looking for. Is I'm looking for that cute moment with Grogu. I'm looking for moving forward and character development. I'm looking for, yes, if you're going to bring back Moff Gideon, thank you for bringing in other Imperials so that it doesn't play as if he's the only bad guy left in the Imperial network. And even opening it on Coruscant with a brilliantly designed lower levels of Coruscant.
100%.
That just, you look at it and you say, oh, Lucas would have loved to have done, if he had that moment back, he'd love to go back and do it this way, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
Because look at all of that mood that's established there and the secret communication, and then going into the Shadow Council. And since we are recording this one after we've seen The Mandalorian and Grogu, you said it before we even started recording. Hey, don't I know a couple of these people better now?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I just find fantastic here is that what they set up is so fascinating. I mean, we've got connections, obviously, to the sequel trilogy that are happening here with Brendel Hux. We've got the connections here with what Gideon's been trying to do the whole time. We've got Pelion, who is making excuses for why Thrawn isn't there and trying to hold things together until he gets back, which is going to tie into Ahsoka. I mean, like, there's so much that's happening here, and there's so much that's fascinating here, right? This interplay between these leftover Imperial warlords and the way in which they're jockeying for position with one another. And even just the way, too, then that Gideon is able to get everybody on his side to kind of like move away from bowing at the feet of an absent Admiral Thrawn and everybody to follow him now. It was fascinating, and I think what it does is it just really sets up this villain who truly is somebody who needs to be taken down by the end of the season. That's what we want to see, especially with what we hear, with what they're trying to do.
Well, I would love, just with the shading of The Mandalorian and Grogu, again, I think I said this when we were talking about the movie, Lucasfilm Publishing needs to really pick this up, because Coyne and I forget the other guy's name, who are in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, they're the ones talking about taking advantage of things. You've got the one guy from the beginning of Mandalorian and Grogu who's like, hey, they're just waiting for us to come back, which he echoes in the Mandalorian and Grogu. And then you have Coyne who's like, hey, this is our opportunity to make some cash, man. And you have Pelion calling him out and saying, random strikes on trade routes isn't the way to go. And then I make a connection to the Mandalorian and Grogu, because that one Imperial warlord, the people are all saying that the trade routes are unstable. They can't. And you suddenly realize those two guys were playing two sides of the same coin. The one guy was saying, you need my protection. You got to give me more tribute, while his own counterpart is attacking the very trade routes that are making their lives difficult. So they're actually benefiting each other. They're squeezing from both ends. I'm like, this is exactly the type of EU book lore that I need right now. And what I love is you calling out the Shadow Council, just those two guys, those few lines, and then extrapolating it to Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm like, nobody I saw that movie with will make all of these connections. That's how you do a tie-in. It's not necessary to enjoy the film, but you and me keying on it, wow, look at what is coming through with our imagination here.
Well, and I think, this is one of the things that both you and I had talked about from the beginning with the new novels that they were putting out before The Force Awakens came out, right? The Aftermath series and those type of things. And we were frustrated because it felt like they weren't really giving us anything. They were just kind of dancing around all of this stuff. And part of that is, I think this is the thing, the shows like The Mandalorian and Ahsoka and what we get in like the animated stuff and all of these things that really still have Dave's fingerprints on. The goal is to have a continuing thread, as all Star Wars does. And when you didn't know with the sequel trilogy, where that thread was going to go, there was no way you could have well-placed, tie-in books and all that. I agree with you, though. I think that because we are where we are with The Mandalorian and Grogu coming out, there is that opportunity to go back in and fill in a lot of these details that help explain things about the world of The Mandalorian up until, the end of season 3, that could do a lot of that legwork, that could, and not in the sense that, like, if you don't get this, if you don't read this, you're not going to enjoy it. But it's the kind of books that we always talk about where it's like, oh, after I read that, it helps me to appreciate the movie in a different way, or it helps me to watch the television show with a new perspective. And that's what you want from those type of books, tie-in fiction. And so, yeah, I mean, the idea of this Shadow Collective and again, the way that it is bringing all of the different elements that we've been getting about the Imperial Remnant finally together here is fantastic. But again, I just have to call out in the editing of this episode and the way they weave all the stories together is the way the entire season should have been edited together, so that all of this stuff worked in concert with one another instead of grinding to a halt the story at certain points. And man, if you had done that, what we get here, and that's actually, I think, what kind of gets me hope for the possibility of, the Mandalorian Grogu coming back for maybe a season 4 or something like that. It's like, I think they understand how to do it better. And they're not necessarily, like, these 2 episodes seem to be that they're not afraid to do the more intercutting of storylines and having them kind of weave together as most television does these days. And so, again, with what they, starting on Coruscant, the Shadow Collective, and then weaving in the story with the Mandalorians, it really is. It's phenomenal stuff. Like, this is like we're back to peak Mando,
I agree. I think that what can also help a lot for appreciation of this season and the larger arc as a whole is, I think that one of the issues is, we all acknowledge those 2 episodes in Book of Boba Fett belonged here in this season, period. And staying stuck with the idea it's got to be 8 episodes is silly, because imagine, if you will, you take the Book of Boba Fett and Mando season 3 and you mash them together and you watch them in quick enough succession, which for this rewatch I did. I watched with my kid Book of Boba Fett and then Mando season 3. And when they play close together, they play really well. And I think that is even more of a testament to what you're talking about the editing, is they took pieces and they put them in the wrong places and they stretch things out while at the same time compressing things too much. Like, if that makes sense. Like, it's frustrating, because I think that one of the problems I have with this episode, and it'll play into the next episode as well, although not really, like the next episode, we know what's coming, but I would have wanted more about the spies hinted at and stretched out through the season as well. Little scenes here and there, because I get all of this truncated stuff in this episode and it's neat, but my entire sense is, I got barely any time with these guys. Hey, everyone, this is going too fast.
I think it's a phenomenal point. And, it's one of those things, again, where when rewatching the season, it truly is one of those things where it's like, I don't think any of this is bad, really. What it just needs to be done is to be re-edited together in a more interweaving and cohesive way, so that the storylines flow into one another instead of, stop, start, and it's almost like this season feels like you're stuck in rush hour traffic until you get to these last 2 episodes. And then, you get past that one point and all of a sudden traffic just speeds up back to normal. And you're like, what the heck were we all stopped for? That's exactly what this season's like.
I think it feels like it is truly like a traffic jam, like you're saying, but there's been an accident. It's not a fatal one. It's okay. You get past it, and then everybody speeds up as if they're going to make up for all of the lost time in the next 5 minutes after they pass the jam. And meanwhile you're sitting there like, oh hey, no, can we just drive? I want to ask you though, very specifically about the use of the volume here. I think that there is some imbalanced volume here. I think that the stuff on Navarro looks fantastic. I think the lighting works really well. I think that it looks like they're really outdoors in Navarro, and Navarro is a big place and all of these sorts of things. But when I get to, and I'm going on the surface of Mandalore, it doesn't play as well as it should. This is one of those ones where we're far enough in that you get that question of, I thought we'd sort of mastered this volume thing. Now, any new tech, any visual effects tech has its highs and lows, ups and downs, what have you. It's just one of those things, though, where some of the wow moments are lessened by the fact that it looks like a bunch of people standing on a soundstage with something just projected behind
it looks
them.
like rear projection too many times. And I agree with you. I think the vast limitations of the volume become incredibly clear here when you have these characters and they're supposed to be on this vast landscape, but it never feels like the vast landscape. It just feels like they're in the 40 by 40 circle that they have for the volume, and there's only so far they can move. There's only so much they can do, and I mean, I think this is where you look at like the Mandalorian and Grogu. It's a film. They had all the money to build that swamp set. Feels incredibly real and lifelike. You think of Andor, where they built that whole city that Andor's from, right? And it feels incredibly real and vibrant. And it's almost like that's one of the things that you kind of needed here. You needed to be able to build vast sections of, the ground of Mandalore. And then you also probably just needed a bigger budget to be able to really pull off, this sled thing that the Mandalorians are on to make that feel more real in the way that you would want. So it's one of those places where it's like they truly are exceeding their grasp and what they can pull off in the amount of time they have. And I think in that way, I can forgive that, because I'm not too frustrated by it, but 100% with you. It's like, yes, this is clearly one of the places where you just see the limitations of only leaning into something like the volume to create a show.
I would even offer that you can overcome the volume's limitations by taking a step back and putting everybody in a blue room or a green room, like episode 3, and just tape stuff on the floor and say, okay, you can sprint as far as you need to in this shot. You can jump up here. We're going to put some foam blocks up here and we'll just take care of it in post. Again, cost, time, factors. But there's almost a sense where I've been sitting here complaining, hey, we're constraining ourselves to 8 episodes, but part of that constraint is the fact that we burn time that we don't need to burn on certain things that are obviously brought in from the Rangers of the New Republic that was shut down, all of that type of stuff. But it's almost like, you know what? I'd rather them have done a 6-episode season and pull all the stops out for this Mandalore part rather than 8 episodes and let's do what we can.
No, man, I agree with that. And I think, I really, look, I one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that we finally get the story behind the story of what happened the night of 1,000 Tears. And Bo finally confesses exactly what happened on that night and, why she feels so responsible to fix what she sees as being the ultimate mistake she made. And so I wanted to ask you just how you felt about that full revelation of her story and how it played out for her, and then, of course, the rest of Mandalore.
I mean, when she relays the story, I'm not entirely certain who would have made a different decision. Give me the Darksaber
Agreed.
and I will spare your world. Well, yeah, she made the moral choice in that moment. She made the moral choice to hand over the Darksaber and say, okay, and the only foolish thing is believing evil. It's sort of the Tarkin conundrum where Tarkin is telling Leia, you got to tell me where the rebel base is. Tell me where it is. I'm going to blow up your home world. And she says, Dantooine. And he says, okay, cool. Blow up Alderaan anyway. And she says, what? And he just turns around and says, you're far too trusting. And it's like, I could see Gideon doing that thing, but I feel sympathy for her while at the same time caught in that moment of, well, what else did you think? When we were talking about Mandalorian and Grogu, you mentioned about the scorpion, right? Where you have it's always going to be a scorpion. It's going to bite you. It's going to sting you. Yeah. Okay. What did you expect Gideon to do in that circumstance? And Gideon was going to do what he did, no matter what, which even is still, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it's like, my question back to you would be, a lot of this explains why the Mandalorians are not really participatory in the original trilogy, like why they sort of go dark, sort of the way, oh, hey, Ezra isn't part of it. We took him out of the galaxy so that he couldn't be a factor. Do you think that the explanation about what happened with Mandalore works? Do you get the sense that Mandalore was truly that much of a threat to the Empire's ability to control things? Just divorce anything from Rebels or anything like that. You're a cash who comes in. This is your first time really getting any sort of history of Mandalore. Do you think that the story is told with the proper amount of scale and impact that you go, yeah, I know why he did it. Look at how dangerous they are.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is going to play into that will be, basically the end of this episode where they run into a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah.
But you see that even with the updated armor that he is given his troopers, right? That it's still not as good as full Beskar. And you see all the tricks of the trade that all of these Mandalorians have in their fighting techniques and their all of these weapons that had been utilized to combat Jedi, back in the day. And I think you do get a real sense of how dangerous Mandalorians are when they're united behind a cause in this. And so I think that is really good. And especially, again, you get that whole scene there where they're on their, sail skiff. And, you get Pa Vizsla and Axe Wolves who are playing the tabletop game, and, they start a fight basically. And what does it take? It takes, Grogu stepping in and being like, no, which is great for his growth. It really shows, that he learned a lot again with his time with Skywalker and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think that this season has been building towards this idea for us to get into our minds of, yes, if these people could put aside some of their differences, right, they could be an incredibly unstoppable force. And that's the thing that leads you, as we bring this episode to a close and they're able to escape, it's like, are they going to be able to find a way out of this and work together the way they need to bring down this Imperial threat that not only is threatening the Mandalorians, but if, Gideon is able to get his way, it's going to be bad for everyone involved. And so Yeah, I mean, I think that they do a good job of helping you to understand the brokenness that the Mandalorians felt after the Night of 1,000 Tears and how it scattered them. But also, I mean, you realize there aren't, hundreds of thousands of them left. There are maybe 1,000 of them left, maybe, hundreds of them left. Right. And so, you can kind of understand in many ways why they would have stayed in hiding after what happened. So I don't know. I think it does a good job, but do you feel the same? Do you feel like that this gives you what you need if you were a normie just watching this?
I think most likely the normies were a little confused by this. It would have been better to have segments of this explained through the course of like a half an episode or larger conversations stretched out through the season even. I think that there's even a question of, if Mandalore is supposed, like, there are too many questions that are left or that come up because of the storytelling here. And it's a script level thing. It can't be fixed. I mean, I think Rick Famuyiwa, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. My apologies if it's tough for me to say. I think as a director, he does a great job juggling things. I think he does a great job moving the story along fast enough that I have these questions really in retrospect. But I think that for the casual fans, this is a little bit too much lore at once. If you stretched it out more, like if they had a 3-episode arc for the finale, like a true 3-episode arc for the finale, I think you could have gotten the casuals on board a lot more easily. Mm-hmm. Instead, by compressing it this way, I think you're accidentally or not making a declaration, hey, this is for the hardcores. And you can't do that. You got to make it accessible to everybody. So I think it's a little less accessible.
That your idea of having a 3-part finale just goes to show that really, if you had cut out all the Lizzo stuff, and the other stuff, which is interesting, but not really important. What was more important is focusing on the Mandalorian story. If you had done that in that, 3rd episode from the end of the season, I think you would have done exactly what we're talking about. And it would have brought that home in a way that would have been even more accessible to the everyday fan. And then it would have been even more rewarding as the Uber fan, right? Because I think you would have been able to really build into that lore. And like you said, in some ways, you have 3 whole episodes for this to sit in. And the other part about this, too, is that, and one of the things I do have to give them credit for, is that this episode and the finale are longer episodes. So it's like they didn't just say, oh, we're going to stay within our same time frame. Mm-hmm. We realize we actually do need to allow this story to breathe a little bit more. And so therefore, we are not going to rush through what needs to happen here. Again, we're going to give space for these scenes to breathe. And I think that was a wise choice here. And your suggestion of just utilizing that previous episode in the way that you mentioned, it just would have made it so much stronger, because we don't really utilize that episode until the last 5 minutes to really get to the point that allows us to jump into this. It's just, it's a frustration. And it really, I think, ends with us feeling the weight of the rest of the wasted space of the season. And yet at the same time, it can't take away from my utter enjoyment for this episode and the way it ends, where it's just like, oh my gosh, we kind of are in that spot where you love to be at the end of a season. How do our heroes get out of this? And so,
right.
I don't know. What do you think you'd rate the Spies?
I will say that I will wind up coming in at a 3.5, specifically because I think that the getting to know the spies, getting warmed up to the spies is still too quick. It feels jumbled. I think that they're doing the best that they can with the script that they have, which is a well-written script. It's just that little part is just so messy. And so I come in at a 3.5.
Yeah, I'm going to be at a 4.
Where did you come in with it?
I can 100% understand where you're coming from, and I totally respect it. But I think that this episode just becomes kind of such a breath of fresh air after, especially Guns for Hire, and it just revs my Star Wars engine. Like, oh, this is what I want, So yeah, I'm going to give it a good solid 4. Which the sad part about this is we've talked about. It's like, dude, this could have been like a 5 easily if the rest of the season had built to it in a way that just felt more cohesive.
Completely agree. But I also agree that people should reach out to you online and discuss this episode if they
I'd
want
love
to.
to talk
So
to you.
where
You can
they
find me
you
all
out
over
there on
social
the
media
internet?
under the name MattRushing02. So if I'm on a platform, that's my name, and I'd love to interact with you. You can also find me here on the network on a show called Owl Post, talking about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. Over on the TFM network, the 602 Club. John's a frequent guest over there. Of course, we have our crossovers. We just talked about the Mandalorian Grogu together, so check that episode out. Plus, a lot of great Star Trek talk over there with my good friend Chris Jones about lots of the different series, Deep Space Nine and Voyager and Enterprise and Strange New World. So you can check all those shows out. But John, if people wanted to catch up with you, where would they find you?
Well, you can find me as Kessel Junkie out there on the wilds of the internet. I started blogging again from time to time at kesseljunkie.com. And you can find me out there on Letterboxd and Goodreads. That's where I have the most amount of fun. And right here on the network, you can find me co-hosting a show called House Lights with Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser, where at some point we will find a director that we all love, beginning to end of whatever segment of films that we're watching, that we'll all love equally the same. But Matt, I think that right now they are getting ready to start movie night back at the Jedi Temple, and it's going to be a humdinger of a film that we're watching as we watch a biography of Borsk Felia. So I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.